weeping for Tammuz. Women weeping for Tammuz. This was an abomination. Now, who is Tammuz? Tammuz is the son of Semiramis, or Beltis, who was the wife of Nimrod. Nimrod is the man who built the Tower of Babel. And according to Babylonian sun god worship teaching, it was Nimrod, when he died, he ascended into heaven, and he literally became the sun. Now he is the sun god, the Babylonian sun god. And his wife Semiramis, a great time later, she becomes pregnant. His widow becomes pregnant, but not in a way that you might expect. She becomes pregnant because the rays of the sun, her husband Nimrod, have impregnated her, and now she is going to give birth to the reborn sun god, and she calls his name Tammuz. And his birth date is December 25th. Now, this isn't any real news to the Israelites, because remember, we were down in Egypt, and the Egyptian sun god Ra, he was born on December 25th. And just about all sun god worship originated in Babylon. So when we were taken into captivity in Babylon, to have the Babylonian sun god born on December 25th, that would be common. And then, of course, many years later, when Antiochus Epiphanes came in and conquered Jerusalem, roasted a sow on the brazen altar, defiling the altar, and then he set up a statue of Zeus, the Greek sun god, in the temple on Zeus's birthday, December 25th. Many years later, the Romans had the habit of crucifying the Jews, torturing them to death on the cross of Mithra, the Mithraic cross, because Mithra was the Roman sun god, and you can look it up in the Encyclopedia Britannica and see that Mithra's birth date is December 25th. There's one day I'll guarantee you that Yahshua of Nazareth was not born. It's December 25th. This has all to do with pagan sun god worship. And yet we see this is what this whole thing about Tammuz is, and December 25th, and of course an older calendar, the the Julian calendar, in which December 25th occurred at the winter solstice. And so it is that Tammuz, the reborn sun god, lived for 40 years. In his 40 years, he was killed in a freak hunting accident, and he was gored by a wild boar. Now, after that, they then set aside 40 days of weeping for Tammuz, 1 day for each year of his life. So that's where the 40 days of weeping for Tammuz came about. But many years later, his mother, Semiramis, or Beltis, she died. But as luck would have it, she did not stay dead. When she ascended into the heavens, the gods sent her back to earth in this giant egg, which came down from heaven on the first Sunday at sunrise, after the vernal equinox, that Sunday sunrise, in which Easter, the goddess of fertility, came down out of heaven, landed in the Euphrates River, busted out, and turned a bird into an egg-laying rabbit. Astarte, Easter, the goddess of fertility, the naked fertility goddess of the East, was the reborn Semiramis, the wife of Nimrod, the mother of Tammuz. Now, it was then that they would set aside the 40 days of weeping for Tammuz that would culminate on Easter Sunday. And that was the day they would then kill the wild boar that killed Tammuz and eat ham on Easter Sunday. And of course, many years later, as the worship of Astarte, or Easter, developed, then the priest of Easter would impregnate virgins on the altar of Easter at the sunrise service, and 1 year later they would sacrifice those 3-month-old babies and then dye the eggs of Easter in the blood of those sacrificed infants. And even in America today and around the world, there's one denomination that only allows the eggs of Easter to be dyed blood red. If you ask them why, they have no idea, because they inherited it from their forefathers. But it goes right back to the sacrifice of infants and the worship of the sex fertility goddess of the East. But still, if you ask most denominations why they dye Easter eggs, they don't know that is the memorial, the rehearsal of child sacrifice. But yet, these are the kind of things that have been brought into what people call the worship of the true God, and is nothing but pagan sun god worship, and God calls it an abomination, and to have nothing to do with it, never naming the names of other gods, and not learning the way of the heathen. Do not learn how they worship and serve their gods, and say you're doing it unto me. It's an abomination that is so repulsive and vile and disgusting that God has to use the hardest word in the Hebrew language. And yet I hear people say, well, that's not what it means to me. Well, again, it doesn't matter what it means to you. It matters what it means to God. And we serve the true God. And we do what he says. If we love him, we keep his commandments. We do not throw other gods and put them in his face.